everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and in this video we're going to continue our discussion from the last video on one-handed shooting techniques. Now, if you remember from the last video, we talked a lot about developing that one-hand skill, be it primary hand, support hand, developing the skill to shoot with one hand. The initial context, as it was always explained to me, was wounded arm. My support hand's wounded, I don't have the ability to put my support hand on the gun. I'm going to shoot with my primary hand only, or I may have my primary hand wounded, I got to draw and shoot with my support hand only. Both very realistic techniques. However, what is a little bit more realistic as far as I'm concerned is that other hand is needed for something. And this is something I've covered before, but I've never done a specific video about it, I don't think, so I wanted to go ahead and add that as a package to the one-hand only shooting skills. Now, what we're talking about is getting out of some of the safety or the range artificiality. Some people have you put your hand on your chest, put it in your pocket, tuck it behind your back. They put it somewhere where it's out of the way, where it's safe. That rule probably exists because something happened at some point where someone was like, oh, I'm just shooting one-handed, let me put my hand in front of the muzzle. I'm not really sure what happened, don't know where the safety concern came from, but it's there. The initial reason you might need one-hand only shooting is a close retention situation. If I have to deliver a strike or I'm defending myself or something like that. That is the most common, besides the wounded drills that you see people shooting with one hand. That's usually from a close retention situation. They may press out, then get the other hand on the gun and work from there. But there are some other situations that I consider to be a little bit more realistic. The primary one is working a handheld light, and then after that it's using cover or defending a third party. Now, the biggest factor with the use of a handheld light is, unless you're using a thumb groove, or a finger loop, or a finger hole like a therm, or surefire cells like a hook and a ring and things like that you can add to the lights, you're only going to have one hand support on the gun. When I have my weapon out, and here's my flashlight, even if I go into like a Harry's grip, I still am actually only supporting the gun with one hand. I'm only controlling it with one hand. This other hand is adding end of recoil support. The gun goes up, the gun comes back down. I can apply strength and pressure from this hand and this wrist and the back of my hand to help stabilize the gun sooner. But I'm still only shooting with one hand. The majority of flashlight techniques, no matter how you use them, are only going to allow you to shoot with one hand unless the flashlight has an addition to it that makes it more ergonomic and allows you to get a two-handed grip. Now there's what they call like a plunger grip or a syringe grip, where I take the flashlight like this and I apply one of my knuckles to the cap to turn it on to activate the light as I shoot. And that's great. However, that points the light not necessarily where I want it to be. It's going to aim the light down. Not too bad, right? Well, if I want to use the light to control and to deliver rounds, I want to put the hot spot in my threat's face or as close to the face as I can get it. So if I'm maintaining that position in a judgment shooting, like drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife, my beam may be low, or if I'm holding the beam in the face to remove my bad guy's visual horizon, my actual point of aim may be above his head depending on the distance. So that's something to think about when it comes to one-handed techniques. Me personally, I have two techniques that I use, one for either side of the gun. Now what does that mean? Well, let's go into it. Now, here's our most common piece of range cover, these big blue barrels. They accurately represent some things you may find to use for cover, concealment, or deflection in the real world. But it's what we got to use, it's what we have available to us, and we don't necessarily get to decide what cover we have available to us, if any, in our self-defense situation. But when it comes to the handheld light techniques, how does using either hand benefit you using cover? The one thing about cover is, if possible, we want to push the light past the piece of cover as far as possible so the light doesn't hit the cover and bounce back and illuminate us to our threat. Obviously, the light's going to give away our position. I get that. I understand that. What I think a lot of people don't realize is, in the daytime, they can see us perfectly. At night, they can only see the light. So a lot of this nonsense about, like, oh, you know, if you shine the light in their eyes, they know exactly where you are. Absolutely, they do. They can't see anything else but that light if you're using the light correctly. During the day, they can see everything. So is it necessarily a disadvantage to illuminate your position when you're in control and you're about to deliver rounds? Well, not really. I want all the lumens in their face to remove their visual horizon, and then I can deliver rounds as necessary, if necessary. During the day, I don't have the advantage of removing their visual horizon. I just have the advantage of seeing them more clearly without the aid of a light. So, same. using my piece of cover. I'm primarily a left-handed shooter, so if I'm using the left side of cover, I want the gun here, and I want my light on the outside of the gun, right? So if I want to press past cover, I don't have to lean out as far to engage my threat. Illuminate, fire. Now what if there's a wall here, or for some reason I can't use this side of cover, or this side of cover doesn't exist? What if my exposure is to this side? I've got two options. The number one option is switch hands. I can do that. I've trained myself to that level. If you're not comfortable with that, or you don't see any common sense in it, then you have to use a different technique, because if I go with my Harry's method and I lean out, I have to lean out further to engage my threat to get my light off the cover. So in this situation, I'm going to use a modified FBI or a neck index. Me personally, I prefer the modified FBI because all things considered, I don't have two-hand control on the gun anyway. So I'm just going to come out like this with the light and lean out like that. So basically that kind of factors into picking two techniques, one for either side of the gun. There are a lot of handheld light techniques. Pick two, just two. Because if you know and you're proficient with 9 of them, that's great, but which ones are you going to choose? If you have one that works in either situation, you only need 2. Knowing the other ones is awesome. You may find yourself in a situation for whatever reason, the FBI doesn't work or the Harry's doesn't work, so you go with a Graham or something like that, and that's great. But be proficient as possible with 2 so you can use the light on either side of the gun. Now, another reason we might want to develop, or we definitely want to develop, that one-hand proficiency, be it your primary hand or your support hand, both hands equally, is the use of cover, even in the daytime. The best use of cover is going to be the more I can get my body behind that cover, concealment, or object that will deflect rounds, the better off I'm going to be. A one-handed shooting position is going to allow you to utilize more of that cover than a two-handed position. What am I talking about? Well, as a demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and get behind my blue barrels here. I'll use a traditional two-handed shooting grip. I'm coming out here. Now, using just one hand, all I need is the gun and an eye. From the other side, obviously same story. Gun and an eye. Does that minimize or does that compromise your ability to be accurate? Yeah, it does. All things considered, I can't be very, very accurate if I'm taking hits. If I've been shot, if I've been wounded, if I've been cut, if I'm in whatever the situation may be. I need to stay in 100% possible best physical condition in my fight. Because surviving, I can survive in a wheelchair with a colostomy bag and a coma. I'm still alive, so I survived. Winning means I go home without being injured. If I find myself in a situation where it makes sense to utilize the maximum amount of cover, maybe I'm facing a superior weapon system, maybe I'm facing more than one threat, whatever the situation may be, I want to know that that is an option. So that's another situation where one-handed shooting skills definitely factor in to self-defense situations. Maximum use of cover is going to be one hand, leading the eye, they're going to get maybe a view of your shoulder, and that's it. If they want to get a better angle, they're going to have to press you or they're going to have to flank you, and you'll have to adjust accordingly. But just because I come off the gun for one-handed shots behind cover doesn't mean I can't immediately go back to the gun. Switching hands also makes sense. Develop the skill to where you can get the gun from one hand to the other hand and use it effectively if your cover only allows you to use your support side. Now, another basic consideration when it comes to one-hand shooting is the draw. A lot of people default to a two-handed draw. They clear their cover garment, purchase gun, get in fight. Clear their cover garment, purchase gun, get in fight. That's great, but that should not be your default draw. Your default draw should be a one-handed sweep, one-handed draw, because a two-handed draw is a luxury. On the range, a two-handed draw is always possible unless the drill somehow doesn't allow it. In real life, especially if you have kids or family or travel with other people, you may find yourself in a situation where you have to protect someone and you don't have the luxury of a two-handed draw. If I recognize a threat and I don't have time to have a conversation with the person I'm protecting, I need to get them out of the way as I draw my gun. Or pull them behind me or push them out of the way or shove them down behind a counter. What are the situations to be? Again, a million possible variables go into any self-defense situation, so I can't predict exactly what kind of situation you're going to find yourself in. I won't even try. What I will say is it's going to behoove you to develop a strong competency with that one-handed draw than it is to rely on a two-handed clearing of the cover garments to get the gun out. So two-hand is a luxury. It's awesome. It's going to be a little bit quicker, but a one-hand should be your default method. Again, it's one of those things we might be uncomfortable with. We've built up that really good, strong proficiency with clearing the garment and getting our gun out and getting in the fight. But think about real life, your wife, your kids, your friends, family members, people you work with, other officers, any situation you may find yourself in. I may not be able to use two hands to clear my garment. Now here's a situation that should be near and dear to every parent's heart. There's 1,000 rounds of 223 in here to simulate the weight of a child. I don't have any kids, and if I did, I probably wouldn't use them for safety concerns for this drill. And I haven't really gotten into buying one of those more realistic dummies that I can use for this drill. This is a defense of a third-party drill, but it simulates a parent. Small child, that would have been like a 2, maybe a 3-year-old, just learning how to walk, holding daddy's hand, mommy's hand. Whatever the situation may be, I recognize the threat. Immediate concern, get the gun out as I grab the child, engage the threat, move to cover, move to safety. Another situation where one-handed shooting really comes into play. Was my accuracy super great? I'm actually pretty happy with it given the distance. Again, self-defense situation, the threat's more likely to be closer than further away. We're dealing with small children. Do we have the opportunity to, or should we trust them to seek cover on their own? They may not even understand what's going on. They may not have developed to the point where they recognize the situation as danger. They just know it's a lot of loud noise, a lot of commotion. I have to secure my child, which means I cannot rely on the ability to shoot two-handed. There are methods you can use to shoot two-handed, but they take time to position the child and position yourself to get into. I don't find them very reliable because I have no idea what my kid's going to be doing while I'm engaging the bad guy. They may be screaming, fighting, kicking, fussing, whatever they're going to be doing. They're probably not going to be calm. So I have to secure them as well as I can, get the gun in the fight to protect my life, their life, and get out of the situation. That's another situation where one-handed shooting definitely comes into play. We don't always have the range luxury of doing whatever we want with this hand. This hand may have a skill or something it needs to do. Even with older children, 8, 9, 10, 15-year-olds, can I necessarily trust them to do the right thing, hook on, and follow? No, I'm going to defend their life. I'm going to guide them as much as I possible, and I want to maintain that physical contact. Obviously, I probably am not going to scoop up a 15-year-old, but I can grab them, get a firm purchase on them, get them behind me, push them in front of me, wherever I got to get them to go, that's what I'm going to do. And while I'm doing that, I'm only going to be able to shoot with one hand. So if you've developed really strong two-hand proficiency, but you stay away from shooting with one hand, you may want to rethink your methods, rethink your methodology based on your life. If you have small kids, and they're going to stay small for a while, and they're going to stay dependent on you to protect them for a while, you may want to think about working on those one-hand shooting skills. Start with your primary hand, build up the proficiency, build up the skill. And eventually, when you're comfortable, as soon as possible, move over to that right hand. You don't have to shoot a lot of ammo to do this. You get a lot of proficiency from your dry fire at home, get a SIRT pistol or one of those snap caps that shoots the laser. I forget what they're called right now. I think they're made by Laser Light. Even dummy rounds. Learn how to manipulate and operate the handgun with one hand. Get proficiency at it. Shoot it as much as you can. Because if you're already proficient with two hands, it's time to develop the proficiency with one hand. Because for a lot of people, especially if you have children, or a wife or someone like that, anyone else in your life, developing that one-hand proficiency is definitely important to self-defense. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I always wanted a no-degreen, baby.